Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and in today's video I'm going to share with you what I do to cleanse and protect my house. It's a process that I do, or I try to do, every month, and I'm just gonna go into it and so you can see and maybe get ideas from your own cleansing and protection. And we're also gonna slightly dip into what is popular to do but maybe it's not worth doing because it's cultural appropriation. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi, which is an alternative to Patreon that takes less from creators. And on there, you can do a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me, Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And for the foreseeable future, all my income from tarot readings goes directly to support Kutches to Gaza, who are part of the mutual aid groups that supports Palestinian refugees in Cairo. So if you'd like to support me there, thank you so very much. This is me trying to live up to, let's try to do 50-50 content in this channel, and some it's witchy, some it's educative and video essay-ish and activisty, and at times I will try to actually bring the two together. This is more of a personal side on how I handle cleansing and protection. If you are especially a beginner witch, you might have already stumbled upon that information that tells you before you do anything, protect yourself. Protection magic is the first thing. And given my experience when I started a couple of years ago, I can support that. Do protect yourself. Costs nothing, it's easy enough. At least the way that I'm gonna share with you, it's easy enough because I am a tired witch, a disabled witch, a broke witch. So we do the essentials. And admittedly, since I started doing these things, it works. Nothing supremely bad has happened. The first thing that I want to address, though, is that indeed, if you are a beginner witch and you're just going around like the standard witchy shops and they tell you, I'll sell you a bundle of white sage or I'll sell you a stick of Palo Santo, because those are the most popular kind of herbs that you hear about cleansing properly. Ari the Oak Witch has a much better video than I can make specifically discussing why it's not ideal to use white sage or Palo Santo. Both are commercialized and commodified for the witchcraft community, but they are partially endangered and they are also part of closed practices. When you think that you get white sage and you smudge, you are not. Smudging is a very specific ritual that native people in America do. If you are burning a bundle of sage or any other herb, you're at best fumigating. Language is important. Let's try not to be colonial, even in our spirituality. I'll send you to Ari's video because she explains perfectly, like being a botanist, working with plants other than being a witch. She explains it perfectly. But the idea is, despite how commercial it is and how often you see it around and how easy it is to spend £5 on a bundle of white sage, it's not ideal. And I can actually teach you how to make your own bundles of local herbs without being colonizing and spending less. How about that? So this is specifically about house, and I am doing this video because, curiously, since the beginning of October, I've got two different people messaging me out of the blue. One of them actually does not even practice, like they know that I'm a witch, but they're not, that I know of, practicing either. But they got in touch, two different people, completely different contexts, saying, hey Isha, how would you go on about cleansing and consecrating and protecting a new house? And so I was like, you know what? I've never actually gone into it. I'm gonna do this for this friend of mine, so I might as well share it with you as well. And this is valid whether you're moving into a new house and so you need a clean slate, or whether it's part of your continuous rituals. Like for me, and maybe I should start in theory here. So my ideal was, I moved into this house and first I cleansed it completely. I wanted a clean slate. I wanted the spiritual equivalent of bleach, which, by the way, a lot of people will tell you it's also white sage. Again, no, it's not worth going to white sage. You know what is worth going to? Culinary sage. Salvia officinalis. You buy it at your own supermarket. I think a bag of like 40-50 grams, the fresh one that you would use cooking, is like 50p. You get that, you bundle it together with jute or anything else that is biodegradable, and you put it to dry for a couple of months. and then you burn that. That's still salvia, that's still gonna bleach your house from everything good, bad, in between, and then you can start over, and that's your clean slate. So actually that's what I did for this house. When we moved here, I was already practicing, so it was completely empty. What I did before we even brought our furniture here, before we moved in, was to actually physically completely clean the place. Even if it was empty, going around and, using a broom and, clean physically, take off all the dust, vacuum around, use your broom. We had carpet, so we cleaned the carpets as well. A homemade thing of like bicarbonate of soda and salt. You make a powder, you sprinkle it around the carpets, you leave it there like an hour, and then you vacuum it. Even purely on a physical level, that cleanses, that takes on all the dirt from the carpets, and it takes all the odors of the carpets as well. So first thing, just clean, just physically clean. Then before we moved in, I had this bundle made of sage, culinary sage, Salvia officinalis, that I got from Tesco. I think I had 2 bags, so it was like 100 grams. It was dry already, so I just started to burn it around the house. So ideally you open all the windows so that not only the smoke goes out, but anything that is there also goes out. And I was very clear, like everything needs to go. Everything needs to go. Everything needs to go. Also going around clapping or making sounds is another way. Like if smoke is not for you, you have asthma, anything like that, this kind of thing works actually a bit too well. I don't often use sound or bells exactly because they can be a little bit too much even for oversensitive people with autism. So it works in getting rid of stuff a bit too well. It would also kind of get rid of me and Raven. But that's the idea. You can also do that kind of thing if you're, for whatever reason, not happy with actually burning something and have smoke around. That's also why, though, you keep your windows open. Personally, I go top down. So I first went in the bedrooms upstairs and I just go around in counterclockwise, because usually counterclockwise you undo things. And so I was going around and around and around that way. You can also say things like to be very, very explicitly clear to the universe, like nothing is allowed to stay. I'm cleansing every bad energy. I'm cleansing every energy. It's up to you at that point, really. If you want to somewhat keep any kind of good energy that is there, maybe the genius loci of your place, so the spirit of your house, by all means, say it out loud. Be very explicit about every bad energy that does not want my good needs to go, or everything needs to go and clear out. That is up to you. I personally, again, went around every room with this sage, windows and doors open because my cats weren't around yet, so I could keep everything open and they wouldn't necessarily run away. Every nook and cranny, when it was empty, it was really easy actually to do. And that's fumigation. Do not call it smudging, that's just fumigation. Fumigation goes back a long time, like even in medieval Europe, and that is the clean slate. That is, we have cleaned physically, we have cleansed energetically and spiritually. How do we keep it cleansed and clean and protected, basically? Nowadays, when I just want to cleanse the house now that it's full with us and my ancestors and my deities, I do not use sage anymore, because again, I have a feeling that even Salvia officinalis, so culinary sage, is heavy. It's the spiritual bleach, so to speak. So I tendentially use bundles made of rosemary, which again, I get from the shop. It's rosemary that people usually eat, and instead I get a bag or 2 and I dry it, and that's my bundle to then fumigate my house. Rosemary is considered protective, and you know it because usually you see it in front of houses along with lavender. Lavender is also very good. Like if you can get both lavender and rosemary in a bundle, amazing. Lavender is something that usually I have to steal from other people's houses, so it doesn't seem great to use that way. I can't necessarily buy it in a shop, so that's why. But at your supermarket, rosemary, again, 50p per 50 grams, so it's super easy. It's less than the bundles that they sell you of Palo Santo or white sage. You put it together, jute or any other biodegradable kind of string. And actually, I leave it here on my heart of Vesta. I leave it there, as you can tell, to just dry for usually a couple of months. When it comes to autumn and winter, because I also have the heaters on, sometimes I just put one of those on the heater, and once it's there for a couple of days, it's already dry. So it's a bit of a tip to speed things up if you are quick, get things done kind of witch, but you don't necessarily have the energy. The heater will do your job for you. Rosemary is what I use to cleanse my house monthly. Some people do it every new moon. I personally have started off from the beginning of moving here I try to clean the house the last week of the month, and then on the 30th or 31st or 28th, being February if it is, I then go and energetically and spiritually cleansing. And so I go around with my bundle of rosemary. You might have seen it in the vlog that I did last year around November. There is part of the cleansing that I do. At the time I was using the peels of onions. That's also very good. It stinks the house, but it's very, very stinking the house, it's how it gets rid of everything. Nowadays, we haven't used onions very recently, and also be careful when you dry onions, because if you also use the peel of the onion that wasn't completely dry, it will make the rest of the onion in your jar mold. Ask me how I found out. I lost an entire jar of onion peels. The onion peels work, garlic works. When I go around in March, April, and there is wild garlic, I go to get wild garlic leaves, not so much to eat with it, but to make bundles that then stink incredibly, but they also are incredibly cleansing. And I think it's the step further, the sage actually. If you use onion peel or garlic, it's not only I cleanse with bleach, there's something not quite right here and I want to put it on the run. So I reckon that onion and garlic are actually the step further cleansing, which is banishing. But we're not gonna go into banishing into this video. But if there's something that's not quite right, put them on the run with garlic and onion. Again, same thing, the last week of the month I have cleaned physically the house, I've dusted, I've vacuumed, I've made sure that my cats have their anti-flea treatments. I physically clean my altar, so I remove everything and I dust that, and then I put everything in. I actually clean every single item with the incense that is of the deity. So for Vesta is lavender, for Venus is rose, and for my grandparents is usually frankincense. But those are my three main altars actually. So I first do those. I clean the entire house physically first, so it's just a matter of dusting, wet wipes, bleach on the house, cleaning the bathroom, all those chores. The physical chores of cleaning the house. And then on the last day, I usually actually still have to clean because I never actually get there in time. But the ambition would be that I've cleaned in the week before, and then on the last day of the month, I just have to cleanse spiritually and energetically. And so again, top of the house to bottom, windows open, not doors because the cats run away. And I go around with my homemade bundle of rosemary, I burn it, and I go around trying to make circles again, in counterclockwise, because that's how you remove things. Usually I say something along the lines, I cleanse the space from any negative energy, only positive energies that want to help can stay. Something along those lines. I go room by room, I go into the space of the boiler, the niche of the boiler, because it's a bit dark. I try to go in every nook and cranny, and then I let the smoke go out. Usually I also make, unfortunately, my fire alarm go off. Something that I do with the bundle is first I set it on fire, and then once the fire is off, the smoke still comes out. But then instead of bringing with me the bundle and the fire-safe dish in which the bundle is, and a lighter, I actually just blow on the bundle. There is a feeling in me that my energy also gets out through my breath. I think Bent, the North Witch, also talks about that. I'm the same. If I blow on things, that's my energy going. So I blow on it, giving it my intention of everything bad needs to go. But when you do that, also on a pure physics level, you give it oxygen, so the ember starts to burn even more, so you don't need to relight it on, but it will burn for a while. Side note, when you do that, and then it becomes a proper smoldering ember, it might be hard for the bundle to just be turned off. At times I have to put it under water to then just turn it off. But then I'm not gonna use it for another month, so it has time to re-dry. That's again my cleansing. That is the clean slate. And then after that, I go around and put on my wards, put on my protections. My protections are a mix of things that I say and materia. Because something that I have realized, and I've tried both options and one works better than the other, is that if I just go around and say things and visualize things, the protection don't seem to work as well. And I had a chat some time ago with Astra, Astrologica. Astra gave me my first ritual to actually protect the house when we had a bad experience when the house wasn't protected yet because I was at the beginning, and we had a peculiar visit that Raven saw. And so we needed to cleanse everything, banish, put on wards. And my first ward was under a suggestion of Astra, which was Angelica root powder and reciting Psalm 12. And something that stuck with me from that is that you can recite something by voice. You can, close your eyes and visualize any kind of protection around your house or around the room, whether it's thorns, whether it's fire, whether it's anything that is protective, a bubble. But when it has an anchor in the material world, it seems to somehow stick better. Witchcraft doesn't necessarily come with receipts other than personal experience, so I can tell you this is my experience. When there is something that anchors whatever I see or visualize energetically and spiritually, it works better. So I wouldn't be surprised that it comes from the axiom that we have all agreed upon, which is as above, so below. And the concept of as above, so below can also be transposed into this is what I visualize in the astral plane, but I give it something to anchor it into the material plane. And that anchor is, in my case, powder. I have a specific mix that I have made throughout the years, but something super simple that I maybe still have it on my Etsy shop. I don't remember if I do. It's my homemade witch's black salt, which is literally salt and the ashes of the incense that I dedicate every day to Vesta and Venus, which is also sacred because of that. If nothing else, a mix of salt and chalk or ashes will work. Why is that? I think that the idea goes back to the things that we can observe, and then in time, science has explained to us why. So the reason why rosemary, which I use, and sage, salvia, are considered cleansing and protective, is because actually, analyzing them and the components that they have antibacterial properties. So that actually made sense. If it has antibacterial properties as a plant, antimicrobial, before microorganisms were discovered, it made sense that, somehow, if you have rosemary around, you don't get as sick because they are antimicrobial. They didn't know that at the time, it was just protective. So that's how it works. Like, the more we're going forward in time, the more science actually explains why these things. And I think that salt and chalk are exactly the same. Chalk is absorbent, like in extreme cases when you've been poisoned, you get chalk tablets to try and absorb part of that poison. And salt was actually, even in olden times, the way that we preserve things, because in the presence of salt, microbes cannot generate as quickly, and so they do not rot food. So there is always a kind of connection between the folkloric reason why we believe something is protective, salt, ashes, chalk, and actually the practical scientific reason as to why. And usually they come together, which I think then is an extension of why I say it's good to have something that anchors in the material world, because not only salt and chalk, we have seen traditionally are considered protectives, but then you go into the scientific reason as to why, and if they help either remove toxins or actually protect from rotting, that kind of makes sense. So if nothing else, mix some salt, coarse salt that you, again, buy from the supermarket, and save the ashes of your incense. Or, you can actually have activated charcoal put into it, and that's it. You need absolutely very, very little, like a pinch or even less. I put it in every corner or every room, and a tiny bit of windowsills. And this time, I actually go around clockwise, because I am protecting, I'm making this word. I do that, I recite something. In my case, it's related to Vesta, because Vesta is the goddess of the house and hearth, and she's my patron deity. So usually I say that this house is protected in the name of Vesta. I sprinkle the salt and activated charcoal around in this little powder on the windowsill, and then I visualize whatever kind of protection comes for you. It can be walls of light, it can be thorns, it can be anything that it's protective and it's like everything stays out. I do that room by room, and then I go into the center of the house, which is actually the middle of my living room on the ground floor, and I start to see the walls that I have visualized in every room sort of coming together. And so at some point, instead of being one room and one room and one room, these walls come together, and then the entire house is circled with this kind of wall. And that's it. That's my protection for the next month. Extra that I've tried to do more recently is just that I have got enough pieces of obsidian and hematite that I was like, oh, these are protective crystals. Like the black ones are supposed to absorb, the hematite, because it's, you know, mirror-like, it's supposed to repel. So what I've started to do is to put one of these protective stones on every windowsills and on every entrance, every door. And the way that I charge them, again, remember, I'm not great with energy. I give commands, I hope for the best. So far, so good. So I go to every one of these crystals, I put them on all my windowsills, and before I put them on, I put them to my third eye, like between my brows, and I give it a command. I'm like, you're here to protect. Everything bad that wants to get into the house, you're gonna stop it. And that's it. And I put it on the windowsill. Then every month, when I actually am cleaning and cleansing spiritually, I get all of these crystals, I get them in a bowl, I wash them, I dry them. That's how I cleanse them and empty them of whatever they have captured, and then they go back again on the windowsills with the command, hey, you're here to protect, nothing gets through, eh? Herbs that I use to cleanse usually come again from the supermarket. Rosemary is the most popular because it's the one that I find there most often. Salvia, sage, culinary sage, if it's there, amazing. If it's not, it's fine. I have recently found a bush of mugwort close to where I live, which is just considered a weed, which is insane to me. And I've gone and I've got some of the stalks with the leaves. The leaves is where the actual component of mugwort that it's magical is, not necessarily in the pollen, although I love the pollen, it's so nice, it's cute to look at. Anyway, I got some of these, I've put it on my earth to dry, and I'm gonna use those, not necessarily to cleanse, although it's very good to cleanse, I've heard, but actually to burn before I do tarot readings or things like that, because mugwort is supposed to enhance psychic abilities. If you have a local park and you can go and identify evergreens and you find cedar, cedar is very good for cleansing, is the local version of eucalyptus, so don't necessarily go for something that actually comes from a completely different part of the land. But if you have cedar where you live, which is something that we do have here in Cardiff, and you can get a few sprigs of cedar and then you dry it, that's also a very good cleansing bundle. But that's the thing, you can have things that come from your space and your land. I'm pretty positive that if you are in the West White world, you don't have local white sage growing and you don't have local trees that actually then make Palo Santo growing. The thing that I am learning the most is how much more powerful magic is when you understand your space in the land that you occupy. You're in a place and you're organic like the land, and if there is an exchange going on, a collaboration going on, everything is a bit amplified because you suddenly occupy the space that you're supposed to in the world. Which is the reason why I'm trying to get closer and closer and understand more about the flora and fauna that there is here in Wales. Because despite being born and raised in Italy, within folk witchcraft in Italy, I don't live in Italy anymore. I will never live in Italy anymore. And it's not something that I am working with, despite my connection to it. But the land, physically, the dirt, the plants that are here, are something that I occupy the same space at the same time now. So working with that, I feel, creates an enhancement of everything you do with that. So make of that what you will. In my experience, that is what creates an enhancement, because again, it makes you understand the space that you occupy and these plants, this dirt, these organic things that are around you that you then use and not use, collaborate with to cleanse a space and create sacred space for yourself. Work much better if they are rooted in the place that you are, rather than going the commercial way of, oh, every witchy shop is white sage, that must be what I need. No, that's been appropriated from Native Americans' culture. Please don't do that. I know that it's popular and it's around. Even the one witchy shop that we have here in Cardiff sells both white sage and Palo Santo. And I understand that to the superficial or newcomer witch, there's no understanding of why that's wrong. That's why I'm trying to share this. Not only you don't have to appropriate, and also you're not using those things the way that it's supposed to be, because white sage and Palo Santo are part of closed practices that if you're not let into by the community of that practice, you don't know how to do, you don't know how to use. You know what you can spend much less money in and make your own bundles, and they are effective to you in your place? The herbs that are around you and you can go gather, mugwort is one here in Cardiff, and genuinely the aromatics that you get at the supermarket. People get their sprigs of rosemary or sage or basil to cook. You can dry them and cleanse your house, and that is much more close to you and therefore effective to what it can do. I do hope that this video was useful and sharing my experience helped with that. I need to make a note if you have survived this long through this video. My ambition, as I said, is to clean the house the last week of the month and then cleanse energetically the last day with my fumigations, and then ward and put on my protections with the salt, with the charcoal, with all of that. I am making this video because since the end of May, I haven't been able to go through my entire process in the order that I want, head to toe as I like. As I've mentioned in the Q&A, there is a very fine line between my autism and my OCD and my need to make things in a certain order, following a certain list, being good and then bad for witchcraft. The good side is that, oh, it allowed me so easily to create this kind of rituals. The bad side is that I don't get the satisfaction as if it's been done if I don't do head to toe the entire thing. So because after May, June was very busy, it was Pride Month, then I got COVID, then I'm still with long COVID, and so end of July, end of August, end of September, I haven't been able to do in a few days, as I usually do, the head to toe cleaning and then the cleansing and then the rewarding. And a lot of times the way that then these rituals become oppressive to myself really is that, oh no, if I can't do it beginning to end like it's meant to be, there's no point in doing it. No, we need to pace ourselves. I know that I've said it recently in the Witches for Palestine, it applies to everything. And so I've started to consider accepting. Accept is a strong statement. But I know, and I tell myself, you do a little. A little is better than nothing. Usually my autistic brain is, if it's not perfect, then it's nothing. No, there are halfways in between. That's a spectrum. That's not a yes or no thing. That's a spectrum. And so that's to say, that's the ambition. Yes, I clean everything, I cleanse, I ward, everything is pristine. But if it cannot be pristine, it's still worth to do the little thing that you can. And so, for example, I am just now taking my crystals and cleansing them so that I'll put them around the house. I haven't done my drip the salt in 2 months, I think. I have just cleaned the living room and a bit of the kitchen, not the rest, but it's worth still going around and fumigating. And I know that if you, by any chance, share my neurodivergence, it might feel like all or nothing. Either I do it properly and full on, or I do nothing. And I'm sharing this because I need to also tell myself, do a bit. Because if you impose on yourself all or nothing, you might very well fall out of your practice, because the standard that you impose on yourself is going to be so harsh that it's going to feel like a chore rather than time that you take for yourself to spend with yourself in your practice, and these rituals are part of that. So actually, I'm putting this out sort of for myself. If I go watch this video again, maybe I'll remember, do not put on yourself that kind of expectation, that kind of standard, because it doesn't help. Doing a tiny bit instead of everything beginning to end, head to toe, it's still better than doing nothing, despite the feeling that if it's not perfect, it's nothing. It's not. But I know that it's hard to get out of that mindset. And until the next video, I really hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because there's need for it, and please go watch the video for Witches for Palestine if you can support directly by donating prizes, if you are a witch, or if you can actually donate to Kuchis to Gaza and participate in the raffle. Thank you so much.